Gang leader Christopher Linton, otherwise called Dogpaw, was shot and killed by police in the Elliston Flats area of St. Andrew today. Kirk Wright was there and now reports.
The alleged gang leader was shot on Golding Road in the Ellison Flats area near the back gate to the University of the West Indies. On the scene, a pair of ladies' shoes, a camouflage hat and blood stains, an indication of the spot where Linton possibly fell after he was shot. The police have since released a statement that after they signaled a Nissan Tiida travelling along Golding Road to stop, Linton came out firing at them, and in return they fired back, killing him. A source told us a .45 pistol was taken from Linton after he was shot. We understand that a female was travelling in the car and it's believed she was the driver. For now, her identity has been withheld, but the police say she will be questioned. Across from the car on the scene, we saw spent casings fired from both high-powered weapons and handguns. Indicom is investigating. On June 26, Linton, who resided on Florence Avenue, was shot by gunmen in Cane River, some distance away from where he resided. At the time, police say Linton told them he was shot outside his gate, but the police say their investigations proved otherwise. Linton was convicted for illegal possession of a firearm in 2013, but his conviction was overturned and he was released in April. At that time, Linton told the media, "Freedom is a must." Kirk Wright, TVJ News.
News that Dr. McLean has gone on leave comes less than 24 hours after the Auditor General report on matters relating to the JCTE and the Education Ministry was tabled in Parliament. The Auditor General, Pamela Monroe-Ellis, has called for the police or an anti-corruption agency to conduct a probe following the transfer of $124 million by the ministry to the Joint Committee for Tertiary Education, JCTE, under questionable circumstances. There has been no official statement from the Education Ministry. However, the parliamentary opposition earlier called for Dr. McLean to step aside while investigations are conducted into the transfer of the funds and activities which took place under her watch.
What we are finding is that her name keeps cropping up, either as an individual with responsibility or an individual who should have seen or should have done something about a number of issues. This is the same JCTE, by the way, that months before we had been talking about in terms of how they were handling their association with the Western Hospitality Institute and the award of CAP.
The funds were transferred to the JCTE over a 32-month period. Some of the money was related to educational programs, which the JCTE was carrying out under MOU with the ministry. However, to date, the ministry has not been able to account for the use of the $124 million. In seeking to justify his refusal to provide the accounting records of the committee for review by the Auditor General, the chairman of the JCTE, Cecil Cornwall, stated that the JCTE had become a private entity which he registered in February 2019 under the name JCTE Limited. He argued that the Auditor General, therefore, had no legal authority to review its accounting records. Despite that claim, Mrs. Monroe-Ellis found that between February 2019 and June 2020, the Education Ministry transferred $78.5 million to the JCTE using the tax registration number TRN issued in 2017 on the basis that the entity was a government institution. But the plot thickens. Despite purportedly learning that Cecil Cornwall registered a company with the name JCTE Limited and was imposing the company on the government while refusing to account for government funds received, Dr. McLean still allowed transferred by the Education Ministry. Between April and June 2020, $11.2 million was transferred to the JCTE. So, was anything done to address the issue? On June 2019 this year, the Auditor General received correspondence from the Education Ministry that it made efforts to sever ties with JCTE after learning that the organization's leadership registered a private entity by the name JCTE Limited. However, Mrs. Monroe-Ellis says the JCTE remains a committee established under the Education Act. The Auditor General says the Education Ministry is therefore responsible for all transfers made to JCTE Limited. Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.
Now, over in St. Anne, the parish is seeing an unprecedented number of homeless people. We spoke with St. Anne's Bay Mayor Sydney Stewart about the issue. If the coronavirus was not enough, the St. Anne Municipal Corporation has another emerging situation on its hands.
We have had an increased number of street people, not just in St. Anne's Bay, but across the parish.
The number of homeless people has been growing since the onset of the coronavirus. Some of them, like these two women, have fallen on hard times. They were mere strangers before, but now they share the same space outside this building, which houses the St. Anne's Bay Post Office and the police divisional headquarters for the parish. Jennifer Duncan tells us she's a former accountant and entrepreneur.
People that knows me know that I'm not an idiot. I've seen me out here and there, some of them are crying. So what are you doing out here? No, you're such a nice person, you're a bright girl.
Pauline Smith says she's from Portland.
I'm not family them, but they are in the state, but I know about the phone to get in touch with them. Yes. I have the phone, I know, and the phone not working. So I don't have a phone to get in touch with them.
Both women agree that living on the streets is dangerous.
People are saying that the insane men will rape you. I think the men who are more sane will do that, to be honest. Yes, because they think you are not collective. Because if you were collective, you would not be out here submitting yourself, say, as being street persons and liable to be raped. So those are the ones I'm afraid of more than the other men. I'm afraid of the insane men, especially when they're hungry and wanting smoke and you don't have anything to offer them. They may attack you.
The municipality has now had to increase its street feeding program to 7 days a week. The mayor says he's met with other groups which have a similar initiative with a view to coordinating their efforts. He says one option is to put some of the homeless people in the infirmary. But here's the problem.
The infirmary is full to its capacity at the moment, but very regularly you will have space. So the investigation is done by the police department. It goes to the respective committee and there's an approval. So these people are all on a waiting list.
For now, the Poor Relief Department is getting new data on the number of homeless people in St. Anne. The authorities say dealing with this problem requires all hands on deck.
From the Ministry of Health perspective, we try to ensure that we engage these individuals, we take them in at opportune times, we give them food, we do haircuts, we give them food, and all of those kind of things. We give them medical treatment, so we have a physician that goes and examines. But of course, that is what we can do. We really don't have a place to put them, which would be ideal for them to be, engaged a little bit better.
To other news now, the opposition People's National Party says it's not in favor of vaccine mandates. PNP President Mark Golding made the assertion at a press briefing today. The details in this report.
The debate of vaccine mandates in Jamaica is intensifying, with the parliamentary opposition People's National Party now adding its voice. Leader Mark Golding believes it's unfair to implement mandatory vaccination if citizens do not have any recourse in law.
There is no indemnification offered by the government, or as I understand it, by the manufacturers of the vaccines, if somebody has an adverse reaction. How are you going to mandate somebody that they must take a vaccine if you're not prepared to stand behind them with indemnification if they get sick or otherwise suffer an adverse reaction? I don't see that as possible.
Jamaica and other countries had to sign indemnity documents protecting vaccine manufacturers from being sued by citizens before they could start receiving supplies of the jabs. Mr. Golding believes the government should offer incentives to Jamaicans to encourage them to get vaccinated.
Not through a bureaucratic process like the CARE program with online applications and failed delivery of the benefits, but an immediate benefit that somebody gets upon being vaccinated, which a voucher of some kind that can be redeemed to help people put food on the table. I think that might help people to make up their mind as well. I believe that the approach that's been taken between the various employer groups and the Joint Trade Union Confederation to work out the procedures to be followed at the workplace in relation to vaccination, a risk-based approach with due process, is the correct approach.
And as the country awaits the Prime Minister's announcement, The opposition wants all Jamaicans to join the fight against COVID-19.
We strongly believe that vaccination is the right thing to do. I am vaccinated. The entire shadow cabinet is vaccinated. And we've encouraged everyone to get vaccinated.
Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.